What type of fees can I charge my clients in the RIA model? That is today's question on the Transition to RIA question and answer series. It is episode number 126. Hi, I'm Brad Wales with Transition to RIA, where I help you understand everything there is to know about why and how to transition your practice to the RIA model. If you're not already there, start out by heading on over to transitiontoria.com, where you can find all the resources I make available from this entire series in video format, podcast format. I have articles, I have white papers, all kinds of things to help you better understand the model. Again, transitiontoria.com. Okay, in today's episode, and I'll apologize in advance, just unfortunately like my last episode, which I recorded not too long ago, still battling a bit of a cold, so if I got to take a quick water break along the way, I appreciate the patience on that front, but should be able to get through the episode here. So today's topic is, okay, if you were to transition into the RIA model, what kind of fees could you charge your client? And where that comes up, or you might think, why, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing now. And you might very well do that. But one of the benefits that I talk a lot about in episodes that come with the RIA model is there's generally, depends on where you are now, a lot more flexibility with how you can run the practice, the types of services you can provide for your clients, what your value proposition is, and likewise, how you charge them for those services. And so however you do that now might be due to the constraints of whatever firm you're at, that they tell you this is the only option or this is how it has to be structured. And you might like that option and you might simply want to continue as is in your new path, and that's fine. But I did want to talk about some of the different ways that RIAs charge for fees to get you thinking that, hey, if you were to make that move, maybe you want to incorporate some of these into your practice as well along the way. Now, as I talk about often, there's multiple different pathways into the model. You could start an RIA, you could join an RIA, there's a flavor in the middle. Kind of just for simplicity on this episode, we're going to talk about is if you were starting an RIA, because ultimately that is the most flexibility on how you could do all these things I'm going to be talking about here. It's not to say that joining an RIA, for instance, won't allow you to do them as well, but that's going to be case by case based on whatever the service offering is of that platform, that RIA platform that you might join. So for simplicity, again, I'm just going to kind of explain this as if you were starting your own RIA. So I want to give you a couple examples of how RIAs are typically charging fees out there for you to consider maybe doing yourself. So by far, no surprise, the number one way that fees are charged in the RIA model is the traditional AUM fee, which is if you have fee-based business now, that's likely what you're doing now. That is by far the primary way that fees are charged in the RIA industry. You do see surveys come out usually every year. Different industry groups or whatnot do surveys that show that, but they also show increasingly a combination of where it's like, okay, yeah, we're still an AUM fee kind of core. That's our core pricing model, but maybe add in some of the other things that I'm going to be talking about as well. But by far, it's the number one. But a couple of things to think about of some added flexibility that you might not have now. So if you are at, for instance, a wirehouse firm and you can have a fee-based account, but they are likely dictating to you, okay, this is the fee structure that you have to use with clients. Now, you might be able to discount that down some perhaps, but they might have decided, okay, here are the tiers of when the fee will decrease. So maybe, from $0 to $500,000 client account is one thing, from 500 to $1 million is another, and you kind of have to go along with that. You might be able to decrease it down kind of across the board, but maybe you don't have any control over what those tier levels are. In the RA model with your own RA, you can set the tiers. If you want to just charge 1% to every client of any size, you can do that. That's probably not where you would end up, but if you wanted to do that, you could. Or if you wanted to have a tier at a different level and a break points at different levels than your current firm provides, again, you have the flexibility to set that. You also have the flexibility to set the frequency of the fees. So quarterly, no surprise, is kind of the most prevalent model out there because that's traditionally it's used at a lot of firms that advisors are transitioning from. And advisors say, hey, I'm just going to continue to carry that on. And so you have the option to do that quarterly. However, there are RIAs out there that say, hey, I'm going to now bill this on a monthly basis, and it's done in that fashion, which you might not have the ability to do that currently, because again, your firm has decided, yeah, we do this once a quarter, 4 times a year, and that's it. So a little more, even if you just wanted to duplicate, the AUM fees, you do have some more flexibility on that front. Okay, moving beyond that, another kind of, and again, these are all much in the minority as far as implementation, but it's slowly growing, is the flat fee approach. So there's a couple ways you could do a flat fee. That might be for a one-time exercise, a one-time service for a client. Someone comes in, whatever their circumstances are, you're going to provide them certain value and advice and help them certain things, and maybe you're going to charge them a flat $10,000 for doing that, and that's the extent of the relationship, and you're not going to move beyond that. You can do that. That is available to do. What I also see, though, is from a flat fee perspective, is where advisors say, hey, we don't want to do the AUM fee, and there's all kinds of different motivations maybe why they don't want to do that. So we're going to do financial planning, we're going to do asset management, we're going to do whatever, but instead of it being based on the AUM, it's going to be a flat fee per year, and perhaps, hey, I'm the advisor, you're the client, we're going to agree, here's how we're going to set that fee now, and we are going to agree we're going to revisit that every 3 months perhaps. I'm sorry, not every 3 months, every 3 years, where you say, okay, based on your circumstances, here's the fee. Every 3 years, because your circumstances might change, we'll reevaluate what that is. And so as an example, I know of an RIA that's actually having a lot of success with this, and they have some larger clients. They charge a flat fee that starts at around $25,000 a year. And they say, here's everything we do for you throughout the year. Here's how we price it. And it's not an AUM fee at all. It is, again, usually starts at $25,000, and they have clients that are even bigger that are larger dollar amounts. But whether the market goes up, market goes down, they add money, they take money out of the account, the fee change stays the same again, except for whatever their interval is. Maybe every couple of years it's reevaluated to determine that's still the right fee level. So flat fees, you have the ability to do that as well in the RA model. Next up, you see this kind of catching on, particularly with RAs that have a younger clientele, is the so-called subscription model, which is the kind of Netflix effect, right? We live in a world now where, for better or worse, we're all becoming attuned to having this kind of reoccurring subscription fee for some service we have out there, whether it's a gym membership, a Netflix, whatever the case is. And so there's business models out there that RAs are doing that say, hey, clients, here's everything we do for you throughout the year. And for that, we charge you X dollars per month on a reoccurring basis. And particularly where that can be helpful is if you have younger clients that need your services and advice, but don't yet have enough meaningful assets where an AUM fee works, perhaps some sort of subscription fee could work. But again, it has to work for you because you got to provide value to justify the fee, but at the same time, that fee needs to be big enough to make it worth your while to be able to add that to your service mix. But that subscription fee is an option as well. And then kind of close to that, you see that there are RAs doing this, not nearly as many as some of these other things, but that the hourly fee as well, right? So you could always do things on an hourly basis, whether it's a one-time engagement or, hey, client, I'm here to help you whenever you need it, and here's the hourly rate, and here's how we bill it. And that's absolutely doable as well. That's more of the, kind of the attorney legal fee approach, billable hours, if you will. Some people feel very strongly about that. Some people very disagree with that approach or don't think it's a good approach, but it is available. You absolutely could implement that where it makes sense as well. And then you start to see some combinations of these fees. So don't think you have to pick one and that's it. That's all you can offer. As I noted at the beginning, there are RAs that might be predominantly AUM, but they also, because there's different client scenarios that could come up, they say, hey, under certain circumstances, we might do something on a flat fee. And so an example might be if there's, a client or a family member of a client that maybe there's been a family member that's passed away, so there's an estate issue and there's all kinds of work that needs to be done on the estate and analysis and information provided to a CPA that you might say, okay, great. Yeah, I can help that person out. we're going to do it for $5,000 for all the work involved, but that's beyond the scope of what the AUM fee is, or again, that's the brother of your client. That's probably all they're going to use you for. So yes, I can help with all that, but it's going to be $5,000 or however you want to structure it. I've also seen it where RAs use a combination of fees with their clients. So they might say, hey client, and this is simplifying it, we do two main things for you. We do financial planning throughout the year. Here's what that entails. And then with your assets, we will invest your assets for you. And here's how we do that. And here's how we price this. For that financial planning, we charge a flat fee of, call it $10,000 a year. And here's, again, everything we do for you for that. And then if you would like us to implement the asset management part for you, we are happy to do that. And we charge that on a basis points on basically an AUM fee. And here's how that is priced out. So you can choose to have like a combination approach as well. If you were like, again, this is where you can start to get creative when you have this flexibility. Excuse me, I'm battling here to keep my voice going. All right, the final thing I'd just say on kind of the types of fees is also when you have this flexibility, something else I've seen RAs do, as opposed to sometimes advisors just in general, and particularly RAs, feel bad, perhaps, if that's the word we want to use, about setting a minimum client size that they will accommodate in the practice. So many advisors do have minimums, and it's unless you have $500,000 or $1 million, I can't help you. And obviously they say it nicer than that. But one way you can try to maybe make that a little more accommodating is, as opposed to a minimum client size, is have a minimum fee. So it's possible where you could set it up and you could say, hey client, here's everything I do for you. If you would like to engage me for my services, I charge perhaps an AUM fee. We'll just use a simple number. It's 1%, but please just be aware it's 1% of your assets, but the minimum that number needs to come to each year is perhaps, say, $5,000. And so that can kind of work itself out, that someone that when you do the math of, okay, where's the break even on that is a much smaller account size, maybe they say, okay, hey, this is just not a good engagement for me. Or maybe that math, when you do the 5,000 minimum on their account size, that actually comes like a 1.8% fee, but they like the value you're going to provide. They know they're kind of grow into that. And as the account value gets up, that minimum fee essentially they're paying on a percentage basis will reduce as well. But that's a way to kind of get around the minimum client size, is to instead charge a minimum fee size. And again, in the RIA model, you typically have much more flexibility with how to do that. And now I'll leave you with kind of three final thoughts. While there's a lot of flexibility with how to do this, like I'm talking about, it's not an entire free-for-all, right? There are some guardrails. And so kind of the three main guardrails are one, from a regulatory standpoint. Just because there's more flexibility to do something doesn't mean the regulators will look fondly on it. So as an example, an AUM fee. AUM fee has been around for decades, give or take 1%. Obviously, maybe that goes down as you get larger clients, or if you're providing a lot of value, it might be more than 1%. But there's no regulatory rule that says you can't charge more than X percent, as if it's a line in the sand. However, it is commonly understood that regulators will take an issue if you are too far out of the range. So for instance, if you said, I'm going to charge clients a 5% AUM fee, that is so far out of the norm, you are going to have a very hard time justifying that to the regulators when they do audit, whether you're state registered or SEC registered. When they do audit your SEC, if they see that, you're going to have a hard time, and they're likely going to take issue with it. So there is some guardrails. You can't just charge whatever you want. You have to be able to justify it, and it has to be reasonable kind of with what's out there in the marketplace. The second kind of guardrail, and this one's fairly easily manageable, you do have to disclose all of these pieces, right? So that's in the RIA's ADV. You would work with your compliance consultant firm you've hired to help you with the ADV. I've done episodes on that. But no matter what your fee schedule is, if there's more than one option, if there's combinations of options, if there's minimum fees, all of that has to be properly disclosed in the ADV. That's not a big issue. Again, the compliance consultant firm will help you with that, but that does need to be put in the ADV. And I would tell you what's in the ADV is essentially the high watermark. And so what I mean by that is if you pick some random RIA out there and you pull their ADV, which is public knowledge, you can find that online, and you look at their AUM schedule and you might be like, oh my gosh, how are these guys getting away with charging X percent at that asset size or that client size? Well, keep in mind, what's in the ADV is the high watermark. You're saying as the RA, this is the most we will charge, in this case, if it's tiers of an AUM schedule, the client. Typically, though, if you look below, like that little fee schedule, there's a sentence or two talking about the RA reserves the right to discount fees. And so just because you see a fee doesn't mean that's what they're charging necessarily all their clients. There might be some clients and other clients, they discount down off that. With the caveat, be careful. You have to be able to justify why you might discount one client and not another, and not discount a different client. There could be reasons for that. One client's situation might be significantly more complicated or sophisticated than another client's, and so the other client maybe a discount works for them and it doesn't for the more complicated client. So you have to be able to justify it, but again, it has to be disclosed. And then the final thing is just, no matter what creativity you come up with, no matter if you disclose it, no matter if the client is okay with it, you still have to logistically be able to bill that, right? So, and this is a common conversation I have with clients as far as how technology works and what a tech stack is, but you typically rely on technology to do all this fee billing for you in the process. My apologies. You rely on technology to help you do it. Now, there's some very robust technology out there to help you cover most of everything I've described here. But just to give you an extreme example, and perhaps it exists and I'm just not aware. I'm not aware of a technology solution that could do an AUM fee on a weekly basis, just to give you an extreme example. Now, I don't know of any RIAs or advisors that want to do it on a weekly basis. And what I mean by that is, as opposed to quarterly, which most do, I've referenced some do it on a monthly basis. Extreme example, if you want to do it on a weekly basis, I don't know of technology that anyone's built that out to offer that because there's no demand for that. So the main point on that is just because you come up with some sort of fee schedule, and even if you disclose it, and even if your client's okay with it, you still need a way to logistically charge it to the client. And there's different software tools that can help with it, whether you're using AUM fees or flat fees, subscription fees. But again, you've got to actually logistically be able to implement it into place. So just a couple of things to think about, hopefully get you thinking about, oh, wow, if I were to make that transition, I had that more flexibility. Is there something I would change about how I charge my clients? And maybe you don't. Maybe you, for better or worse, it's because your firm requires you to do it a certain way, but that's working for you, that's working for your clients, and you don't want to change that. That's fine. You generally should be able to just carry that over as is, but you likely will always have more flexibility to implement some of the things I've been talking about here if you desired to do so. With that, as I said at the top, my name is Brad Wales with Transition to RIA. This is the type of thing I help advisors with, is understand all the nuances of the RIA model and what it might look like for their practice. So happy to have that conversation with you as well. First things first, though, head on over to transitiontoria.com. You can find all the resources I make available from this entire series in video format, podcast format. I have articles, I have white papers, all kinds of things to help you better understand the model. And at the top of every page is a contact link. If you click on that, you can instantly and easily schedule time to have a one-on-one conversation with me. Whether you want to talk about today's topic or anything else RIA related, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. Again, transitiontoria.com. And with that, I hope you found value in today's episode, and I'll see you on the next one.